Oh, see, oh, see, let's improvise, 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 improvise. War outside, outside, outside. People, people yell, people yell, people yell. They want everybody needs something. Everybody needs to have the right, need to have something right. Anyway, so for whoever is listening, all I want to make sure people don't think I'm here to somehow show my expertise on the sound and the music. I'm just here to have a little conversation about culture and art. So this is, I guess, third, uh, the third speech, the third talking I'm doing here. First, introducing myself. The second, just talking about the show, a few shows I've seen around in the North Italy. Just for you to know, the sound you're listening on the background, something just put it together by myself. Of course, it's I don't blame to be a musician, so of course this is something I just assembled together and improvising with all kind of instruments and tools I thought and able to combine together. As I said, I like to consider myself an alchemist of technology and sound. I like to be able to combine things together, being able to use a little bit of everything because I think that's the rule of the experimental artist. This is the meaning, I think. Experimenting means you don't really care about selling art or making something people like, and you just want to enjoy and have an audience that is considered something beautiful or something right for some reason. I just care about just giving energy, just care about communicating, just care about expressing something, expressing myself and what I feel like. So now is actually j- just important to have a feeling to be wanting to expressing something to find a moment to put something out. That's not always easy because many times you we all are busy with our life, with our problems, with everything we have to do all day long, and that's why it's very. It's not always easy to stop and considering to do something for yourself and for your enjoyment, that's something that makes you feel good to do. So it's just already so just something important to be able and have the time and the freedom to do so. That's what. So I feel I'm is already something very good and very important to be here and be having find the time to do this. Anyway, outside is a raining day. It's dark, getting cold, and thinking on what's going on around. Because, as I said, I don't want to make a speech about politic or social issue, even if I think everything is part of the work I'm doing anyway. So it's inside in is meeting about is really involved in and and like a sponge. I like to consider it's like a sponge, the art, a sponge that somehow grabs everything's just cleaning or just absorb a little bit of what's going on around. People think I wonder why I'm here with a microphone because I don't know. It's probably the sound of my talking is getting more clear. I hope so. So what I was saying is I like to consider my work more like a sponge. Um, I, I feel like being an artist, not like telling or giving you a detailed story or just analyzing issue or problems. Otherwise, it wouldn't be art. I think otherwise it would be being an informator or informating, like doing like giving you information somehow. And this is not the meaning or the idea what I consider be art or culture this way in a free way, because art is something that goes behind. I mean, it goes free to move in all direction, and that's what I. Well, this is what I like about it. Something that can be free to go in all direction without any, without the needs of respecting the rules or sort of path that required in other discipline, in other activities. We tend, I think art is that's the good of art and the good of being in this field is just the idea of navigating. I mean, to self navigate, flying, bit on a little bit on everything. Of course, as I said before, the artist is a sponge and absorb everything. He is in touch. Everything is next to. So, what is possible? This, of course, this moment of life, what I what I see, what I feel, um, what I'm experiencing um, is definitely definitely hard in a way to, like I said before, it's hard to do art and be able to present yourself in exhibition like galleries, traditional, or very typical typical work you can see in museums or space they usually present this kind of it's kind of a expressive language. My sound is I stopped it because it was too confusing just to concentrate. So going back to what I say, the the feeling is that there are very interesting is a very interesting moment, is a very interesting situation, just the opportunity to research new tools using all the instruments technology is giving to the artist at the moment. So I really think we are living in a very stimulating moment for these all this opportunity just to uh, research and experimenting. Just a few minutes ago, I was checking to make new animation and images interactive with software. And you can see a bunch of very interesting stuff. Um, there is a free coding and other free tools you don't need to buy and you need to spend money for. So you just need a computer and just check searching for a bunch of information and tools you can use. And of course, more you looking to do something on your own by yourself, and more you should learn new things. Is really a field. I'm doing this kind of research and this kind of this kind of work almost 30 years now, and it never ends. You basically keep going, and there's always something new. Very sometimes very frustrating because actually most of the times very frustrating because you feel you never reach the point to stop, and there's always something new that you want to learn and trying to achieve with your machine, and so you go on and now you put this and now you put that and now you use as instruments uh, done by software, and now it's by in a device you just to add to your piece. So it's never hand, and plus other other in other tools more traditional that in my case I like to combine, and of course it require also the other um, expertise, time, and knowledge to assemble and putting together drawings, paintings, sculpture, traditional and with technology, or the photographs, videos, and stuff like that. So it's basically a very, very, uh, very interesting moment for what I said before, just for all the tools we have available. Of course, what I consider a little more weak for this whole area is the part of the content. Maybe it's just something that um, is just a remind or just is an habit used from the past. So what I'm trying to say is the content or the meaning in the work of art, like used to be talking about different aspects, social or political or other things. Of course, is an aspect you can always use if you feel like, and of course, many time the piece on the technology you see is looks like more just a special effects or something a little bit weak for what concern the meaning of it. So, but it's okay. I mean, of course, it's also it probably was also the same before in the past in the century where it was only drawings and paintings pretty much the same. So many artists used to were very able, very familiar with the tools that you were using, but it probably just ended there, not being able to express anything else than just a good technique. It probably is still similar today with all these other tools, but anyway, of course, it's just like another way, and of course, then it depends on the experience and the ability and the, the good artist being able to do something different and more unique. Of course, I think it's probably has always been the same. I used to spoke to some curator, somebody a few days ago, and it was concerning. Oh yeah, before I mean recently there are so many artists, so many young artists around, and that's why probably everything is becoming so confusing and very difficult to find something good because there are so many. It probably is true in a way. In the past decades, I don't know too much in the ages in the for the what concern the history, but of course probably before was actually many artists because was talking about in the history time like 100 200 and etc ago years ago where artists many artists were doing portrait or decoration or stuff like for funeral work just also as a job, so also to making money, and of course was also the craft kind of kind of involved with in art, and but of course is also I think is not so different also today. Many young artists finding a way to survive and to do their own work, also doing commercials, using their knowledge in new technology. That, of course, in the contemporary work market is required. More specialties and experts in computers, coding. design and stuff like that. So probably it's just different. It's just changing in that sense. But I guess I have no enough. I have not enough knowledge or information in terms amount of numbers before and now. So I cannot say there were more before than now. Of course, today we live in a world where the access to tools and way of expressing ourselves is very open in some way, in a way, because it probably is still something that we talk in a rich society where almost everybody in the Western world or the country with some good, wealthy situation, more young and more people have access to certain tools, but it probably is not the same in a poor country where maybe less people have access to high tech or stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, so is it probably a special situation here in a Western or in a wealthy society, in a wealthy country where more people, more young, so more people have access and time to experimenting or express themselves. Of course, in a way, the access to all those tools, just even a small cell phone, give you allowed you to, and internet allowed you to taking pictures, doing a sort of interacting chat and editing your own sound, your own images, and maybe some singing, some music, whatever. It's probably a way where really a bunch of junk, a bunch of garbage is also around. So of course, it's become. But this is really the time. I mean, in a way, what we're living today, not only in art. I mean, we see the same situation on daily life where the access on online giving people a mass, the mass of people, the access, the opportunity to express themselves, to interact with news and with each other, and expressing themselves somehow. This is really, I mean, many people consider this something stupid, something shame, something not good. I honestly think is I think anything that give you access to express yourself and be able to communicate is better than don't. Then, of course, the quality it can be discussable, can be uh, can consider and judge, but in this way, it could be or somehow it will be in the time where people get familiar and is able to understand and know more, and of course is able also to select better what is good and what is not. So I think I wouldn't worry like somehow, especially what I see, what I hear from traditional news, from traditional media, for what I see, what I read around, what I listen on a speech of those expertise, those very professor of whatever they are, they're criticizing the tool, the possibility that people can express, can use internet, can use social networks, can use somehow their tools also by the computers, using the computers, and do and say whatever they want. Of course, as I said, he is we are living in a really very rubbish time, very in all sense, in all way. We live in a moment where we are producing too much. We are producing too much merchandise, and of course also the the all the material that we throw away, all the garbage, the rubbish is too much, and we know today we are having a hard time to to find a place to uh, to get to the point to recycle and or get rid of the this whole material that the industry, our consumistic time is producing, and basically uh, we are basically getting full everything ourselves. We get poisoned, we get very dirty, making poisoning ourselves, poisoning the nature, poisoning our cities, poisoning the sea, everything, getting full of all the junk and that we are using, and the rest of it we're getting, we looking the spots or places to poisoning everywhere. I guess if we are not able to stop this all enormous amount of material, we're gonna find or we need to find a way to put in the space somehow, and poisoning the universe. It probably it probably is the only yeah it's the only way to we probably we have a we if we found a way to burn all the shit in the space, maybe sending to the big sun uh, star, it probably is able to burn everything, and we get rid of it. But until anyway, beside the joke, we are having very hard time at the moment about this whole junk, and it's not easy to understand, and making people understand, and our politician understand that there are no way. I mean, if we keep producing so much, if we keep making so much shit, we need to find a way to get rid of it. But it probably getting worse in the sense of pollution. Oh, we need to understand that we cannot produce so much, and just going back to doing a step back in a sense of producing less, and recycling more in terms of I think is the only solution to change the way, the path we made in the since the industry is basically the consuming, mass consuming is basically working non-stop until now, doing production, and this all use and throw. The stuff we buy, the purchase in this worldwide market is basically going to suffocating the whole earth, and this is of course something we cannot handle at the at the infinite, at the forever. Anyway, just this talking, just these few words, just to connect to discussion I was saying before about the surplus on artists. It's probably we getting the production is too much for no on all ends, also in terms of junk and in merchandise, and also on artists creating always trying to creating new stuff. Of course, the opportunity to the tools and all these is giving the chance. The other side, the other hand, is also the opportunity. People probably think that they can easily find some good product, good they can create something very very special that somehow they can get rich very easily, and that's probably the dream of many, the majority of people that want to, trying to get successful. I see in all the fields, in the music, in the literature, in theater, in art, in visual art, in all fields. There are many people, many schools are full of young people that want to learn, want to study art. Yes, of course, is gonna be is gonna require some sort of selection. Anyway, like it's always been, even what I remember my youth were studying art, were going to the school, high school, and then university, where many young people, but at the end, the majority were taking other way, other direction, because of course not everybody at the end is keeping going, keeping get through the all difficulties, and or just have the energy and the inspiration, let's say, inspiration on the art fields. I mean, is something that, of course, in terms of for what is my experience, at least for what is my idea of art, it require a lot of sacrifice and a lot of. Is definitely not something that, in terms of success and money, or opportunity for better getting a better life, in a sense, is very very easy. I mean, it's not, basically it's not easy at all, and that's why it probably the selection, natural selection, is in that sense is this. So what else I can say? um, Going back to these those tools, maybe uh, can just give a small uh, just information, just a little information about what I am been doing just to um, trying to explain a little bit on words what I'm what I tried to accomplish to, with this experience since I started this adventure. Well, I was a student. Let's say this. Since I was a very young high school student, I mean, just a little previous information. I grew up in an artist family, so all my experience, my youth, I grew up in a house in the studios of my father, my uncles. They were doing art let's say contemporary languages like paintings and sculpture, but still using more like I called traditional experience, even if for them it was experimenting anyway. So it was more also creative and all the respect for that. But my age, my youth, for me, that kind of language was too old, was too traditional, and so I grew up very attracted by that language, expressive language. But since I started to learn and to drawing and making my little exercise in terms of work. I thought it was not my language, it was not my path. And so I became to be curious. I grew up in Naples, and the situation in Naples for me was the air I was breathing was in general very traditional people. If you talk to people a little bit outside on the art system, they were all very traditional, and everybody, the maximum was very figurative, very landscapes and figurative works, more like in paesaggio and portrait kind of stuff. And the little area of people were more like interested and more advanced in terms of knowledge and experiences of art. Of course, they were looking on more the avant-gardes and abstractism and all the art expression was in the history of art of the past century. What you can see also it was possible to see in the galleries and some shows around, but of course the was very, as I said, very small circuit, and for me it was too small anyway. Anyway, so I started to be curious and traveling around in Italy, Europe, and after, of course, after years also in the United States. But before when I was very young, my first experience was from Rome up north. Of course, all the Florence, Venice, Milano, and then to the other cities of Europe, in Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, Spain, etc., where I basically developed learned, I mean, at least to educating my eyes on different art, and of course also looking on books, catalogs, etc. Everything, reading sort of historic or curators who was doing shows or newspaper magazines, etc. was showing anyway art more contemporary, more advanced. My, I have to say, my first what influenced me very strong, very, to give me any way of considering no, contemporary art interesting, was the my first impression on pop art from Andy Warhols and Oldenburg and Rauschenberg. All that kind of stuff was really, really beginning of my. I was 16 or something like that, 15 years old, 16. Was very impressed on that kind of work. Very different than what I used to experience in the Italian way of looking art. Very, very. My feeling was more like, yeah, informal, abstract too, but very, very, very serious, and also very, very sad, very little bit oppressive, because everything was about after war. Everything was about struggling in general. Pop art to me. Give it me something more happy, more open, more normal in somehow. No, that sense of a tragic and negative, pessimistic way of looking the world. That was basically showing in the artist wasn't familiar in Italian in Italian panorama. So as I said, I haven't seen those artists of pop for real, just on books. So I started to travel as I said, in Europe, North Italy, and slowly, I start to see different things. Of course, the beginning was very impressed by French artists, Matisse, and, Paris, of course, was very important in terms of the Picasso and stuff like that. Miro. Then I remember was very one of the first shows very impressed me a lot, was the show of surrealism in Milano, where Matta, Alfred Matta, well, Matta, I remember the name. Miro, and of course all these other artists, Dali, Magritte, etc. But mostly, I think the Spanish artists were the more interesting in terms of freedom on lines and colors, especially Miro. I would say also those sculpture very interesting. Was very very impressed by those. So anyway, after that, I started to getting more information, and other way of thinking art. Very interesting was the moving images, moving somehow. I realized that were some artists doing this experiment using electric machine, like Marcel Duchamp, or let's say all those Dada artists. But then, of course, Marcel Duchamp, I realize, has been the first and the genius of this century, that basically anticipate a bit of everything we have done so far. All this idea of making art, also the ready-mades, and also making art on familiars and objects, founded objects, or using electronics, machine or mobile. And of course, I read it, books like in images of Bruno Munari doing the mobiles and using his projects work using more like I don't want to call design, but in a way it was more the idea of making an object using a technique, using a way to project somehow, not just having an expression on inside of the artist, involving the feelings, but more like the brain and it is thinking on something, how to build something basically, and something that always in this contest, in this period of time where everything is moving so fast, and of course the beginning of the century, from the 19th century, is no, it's not the 19th century, it's the 21st century, has been basically very influenced by the all the industry and the changing in the with changing industrial revolution, with the machine changing our the way of life, with moving ourselves through by cars, and of course on a plane, everything like that. And it became like the engine by oil, or all kind of electric machine. So basically, since all the avant-gardes, I found it very, very interesting. Also, the food, the attitude, the way of doing art by the futurists, Boccioni, Carrà, and all these other artists, also in the music, in the sound, in the art of like the theater. Then, of course, the Bauhaus with this other way of experiencing, a way of assembling, and the also interaction, and the disciplinary way of putting together different way of making arts, like theater, movie, cinema, and visual arts, music. Everything was so put it together somehow, in interactive interaction to each other. All the artists were more like living in this kind of a big together in this big situation, big space, big space of work, like lab, like a big lab, where everybody was putting together somehow, influencing to each other. This was very, very interesting. Of course, the movie, the new media like television after all these, of course, made a big influence on the art scene, and so when I, as a student, started to learn and to understand, to see all these new languages, and how the all these way of expression was taking part, was somehow getting out. Of course, I became always more interested to learn and to find my way, and to find somehow a way to learn, a way to understand what I was doing. And so continuing my research on something that was related to the context, to the world that was changing outside, the like all these changes in our life with all technology and so on, became, of course, parts of our education and parts of our of our the content, the content, the language, basically using the tools, and the contents were coming with the tools. No, just to make a, a quote on a famous uh, theorist of new media like McLuhan, the medium and the message, or the medium is the message, basically. And so, of course, for my generation, I consider myself a son of the TV, and of course, it was very the beginning on when I was already still studying at school and at the university. And my idea of making art was somehow trying to put this content about how much the TV, how much the media was influencing our life, my life, and the life of everybody. Because and that was the content and the idea of somehow making pieces on this topic, on this content, on this the uh, the aesthetic. Of course, getting close to this media, I didn't really know what to do because my experience was just to work with the image, and of course, my feeling to touch things, more to consider the material in the real sense of the real sense, was more like what I can do with this untouchable stuff, because the TV was the box of TV, and inside was a cathodic tube where the images and information was coming out. But I couldn't really understand. I couldn't really find out what to do. In fact, in those years, I was really get very um, uh, it was difficult to find a way, and somehow to find the material supports somehow could express and could express this world I was trying to to represent. And of course, I was at the beginning. I was using traditional media, like traditional, drawings, paintings, and all the bunch of hardware I could find around. Something after I could really express this kind of fluid images. Somehow, I I thought it was a good idea to use some kind of elastic fabric like lacquer, and I could paint on it and print then images on it, and then I could stretch by other tools, other objects, basically to stretch in the space where I was time presenting those pieces. And somehow I could feel, oh, okay, I'm getting close, but not close enough. Then, of course, just the coincidence to I meet this guy in my class. Was a Swiss. He's a Swiss. He's a still he's a Swiss guy, older than me. He was coming from another experience, also another life. But then he became interested in art and decided to make to study visual art at the Accademia in Milan. So anyway, I was at one point that I saw this guy coming at school with old TVs and pieces of TV, old, some working, some broken, and other electronic devices, and he was assembling things together. Also coming with a video camera that for me was unknown, something a video camera, moving images. I never saw something before like that. So anyway, it was very attractive, and then I started to know him and talking and see what he was doing, and somehow I found what I was waiting, what I was looking for. No, because my idea of making uh, images from the TVs, and I couldn't really find the right instruments, the right tools. At one point, I said, "Oh wow, he's getting the tools because he's getting really the TV, he's working with the TVs." So at that point, I said, "Oh shit, now I realize what I need to do," and slowly I started to taking also those TVs and those material it was somehow giving to me also, and I could making my first experience. At one point he left because he he finished 1 year or 2 years before me, and somehow I heredited all this material because he left. He went to United States for continuing his research with university in New York, and so I somehow he left all this material. Said, "Hey, take care of this stuff, and then do if you need to do something, or just keep it and you give me back." Or I don't remember actually if he said give me back. So anyway, I already did this stuff, and I started to making my first experiences on cathodic tube of TVs and all these electronic machine like engines, electronic engine to move magnetics stuff like that. And I became to manipulating and getting my first electric shocks from all the electric parts of the TVs was all uncovered by all the boxes I was taking apart and making my experience and I find out the way of the film the images on cathodic TVs. But that, of course, I realized also that other artists was doing already the same. I mean, I realized there were this area of art called the video art, and I got basically to know this whole new world and discovered a generation of artists from the 60s after there was using as a medium the video, and of course I realized it was wow, this all this new area of research and art was very interesting in terms of very new, very something completely different than what I was used to see before in terms of idea uh, and making piece of art like paintings and so on. This so the paintings and sculpture was the actual TV, the actual materials. I said, "Wow, this is the way." I mean, I found out how I could continue and be interested on continue my research and found finding what I was looking for, the tool of my what I needed. I didn't know it was just a moment, a short moment. But anyway, so I realized Bill. I discovered artists very important like Bill Viola, Wolfgang Vostell, Namjoon Paik, etc., etc. Of course, all the body arts, Naumann, etc., etc., etc. There was Vito Acconci, all these artists that was using all the medium to more like documenting their performances or just to make the installation and using the video more like the real canvas, real canvas, real supports of this way of visualizing and making artworks. So at that point, when I started, and of course I putting together different elements, etc. I then I realized something new was coming out, and this new was the computer. So the computer started talking about in the um, 80s. Computer was something not really available in the consumer um, the consumer world and the consumer, so just available for normal uh, mil- people without with not so much money anyway. So basically the computer got something. I got interested on to find out what kind of machine was, but because it was impossible, it was still in at the Fine Art Academy at that point. It was the last year maybe. So to actually find out what tool was and how you know to learn a little bit what it was, I decided to go work on help a commercial studio, post production video studio. They using already some graphic machine, some graphic computer for their video production, and I had luck to they took me for to help and to gave me access to those machines, and slowly for at least 1 year I was there, slowly step by step learning how to use these primitive computers, called because they were very primitive comparing to what is now, and now they changed it. So anyway, now I stopped this conversation. It's getting something I think nice anyway. This conversation, at least for me. I don't know who's gonna never listening anyway. But for now, I will stop and then I'll continue from maybe from this point to go further.